Hello, welcome to A Wash with Colour on Peatlands Park at Derryhubbard, County Armagh. This beautiful parkland and nature reserve is an ideal place for quiet recreation and painting. So later I'll be taking a special guest down to the bog to do a little bit of watercolour painting. But for now, I'm off to gain an insight into the background and natural history of this area. The peat here has been forming for about 10,000 years, and it represents an important habitat that is becoming increasingly threatened. Peatlands are the last home for many of our unusual and interesting plant and insect species. Plants like sphagnum moss, sundew, asphodel, crossland heath, pitch's plant, bog cotton and heather. In the late 17th century, Peatlands Park was acquired by the Werner family and became part of their Churchill estate. The land remained in their ownership until the beginning of this century. For most of that period, the park was relatively unused, except for hunting, shooting and small-scale turf cutting on some of the bog margins. From 1901, the land was acquired by the Irish Peat Development Company, who carried out a commercial turf cutting operation on the bog areas. To facilitate peat extraction, the Irish Peat Development Company installed almost 16 kilometres of this narrow gauge railway. In the early days, the trucks were pulled by workmen. Then in 1907, the system was electrified. This lasted up to the 1950s when 2 diesel locomotives took over. Today the system has been reconstructed and can be used by visitors. Down the road from Peatlands Park, commercial harvesting of turf is still taking place. It is mainly excavated to make moss peat and potting compost for gardening. Apart from the peat, this area is well known for its fishing. And why wouldn't it be? Behind me is Loch Neagh, the largest freshwater lake in Britain and Ireland. In fact, Loch Neagh is so large, it's more like an inland sea. It covers an area of 148 square miles and is 95 feet at its deepest point. It holds 769 million gallons of water, which is the equivalent to 7 million swimming pools. The loch supports a wealth of fish and wildlife. Not too far from the shores of Loch Neagh is a little place called Arboe. I'm on my way to meet a local artist who has been living and working here for over 10 years. Diane McCormick creates ceramic masterpieces.
Well, a lot of it would be natural forms, and I like a lot of things with textures on them. It doesn't have to be like anything in particular. You know, you could look at a seed pod and say that's a nice texture on that, and maybe say look at a building and say I like the shape of the dome on that. But it's trying to, you know, amalgamate different influences and different textures and to make something that's your own, I suppose. If you make something for yourself and you make it that you really like it, then you know there's other people there will appreciate it as well. I've made things in the past that have been sort of to other people's ideas, and they don't really work as well, you know, as making something that you think, well, I would like that in my house. You can plan to a certain degree and make the moulds and do all the plaster carving, but It's only till you actually sit down and put the clay into the mould and play about with the clay that you can come up with new ideas, and you can't write that down. I can't anyway. I almost have to have the piece of clay in my hand and think, oh, that's an interesting shape.
Is there an Eastern influence in the work you do?
Well, I suppose you could say there was. The glazes I use originated in Persia, although they used to use a wood fire kiln to get the lustres on them. And some of the shapes and of the mirrors and the domed pieces, they would be they're taken from minarets and towers and sort of archways from Eastern architecture. It really just starts with a bag of clay. I don't throw, I would hand build, and basically that means you roll out into slabs, different thicknesses. I spend a lot of time carving plaster moulds, so that I would translate my textures that I like onto plaster moulds and plaster rollers. And then I would build up the shapes. And then after the pieces have dried a wee bit, I join them together using a clay slip. And then they have to dry, usually for a week or more than a week. If you dry them slowly, stop them cracking. Then, once they've dried sufficiently, they're biscuit fired to about 1100 degrees centigrade. I have 6 different glazes for dipping in. You can see there's a blue, bright blue, 3 greens and a matte one. I like the matte glaze, it's not so shiny, and it can give you if it works well, it can give you like a reddish pinky colour, very deep colour that you can't get any other way in ceramics. You can't, you can buy commercial colours, but they don't give you that same sort of iridescence. They just give you that very bright gold that you often see around plates and the rims of plates. And then they're fired to the glaze temperature, which is about 1060 degrees centigrade. And then they're given the 3rd firing, which brings out the lustre. So, and it's a fairly awkward firing, that last firing, because you could get it wrong and either end up with too much lustre, it's too grey, or no lustre at all. You're trying to get those the midway point, the nice pinks and purples, and the underlying colour coming through as well as the surface lustre.
This is Donaghmore, where St Patrick is said to have founded a religious establishment in the 5th century and to have given the village its name, Donaghmore, meaning foundation. The High Cross is actually 20 feet tall and dates from the 9th century. It's one of Ulster's finest early Christian monuments and has been recreated as a souvenir made from peat. Brian McGurr of Island Turf Crafts has captured the very essence of the Celtic era by creating a unique range of kiln-fired peat ornaments.
The turf I would need to be using here would be a deeper down turf. It would be black, a real hard black, whereas the top layers now, some of the local areas here, could be a wee bit softer. It's real black heavy stuff now, but it's very hard and easy work with. Firstly, I started off 9 years ago with 2 Celtic crosses. Cause in the area here there was an old Celtic monastery down in Arbo, and the Arbo cross was there. So a lot of people would go to visit it, so I sort of tried the idea of, I'd love to, make a replica of that and have something to sell to these people when they come here. So that's where I started off. I would go around, I would take a good look at the cross and have a good sketch of it and pick any wee different characteristic marks on it and make sure to have them in the cross. You'd have to put every bit of detail on it to get it rightly. And then I had plenty of experience at sculpturing, so it comes out far better and it comes out very real looking.
And what's the process then to get a mould from the wood?
Send it away to get a steel clamp made for pressurising the turf together. To get it finished now, we'll have to get the turf and we'd get it kiln dried, have the turf dried out. Sometimes for the smaller items we'd have it dried up like pepper, and for the larger items we'd just pulp ordinary black turf up bind it along with a glue, and then it'll be compressed into steel clamps, and later it'll be sandpapered, then varnished.
What's your outlet in Ireland?
We have every airport selling our product. We have all the top stores like Blarney Wool Mills, Roaches, and the top gift shops in Ireland would be now carrying our product.
My special guest is well known to television viewers. He is, of course, broadcaster and journalist Noel Thompson.
I started off, did a university degree in political sciences and modern languages, left university not a notion what I was going to do, went to work for my brother who had a restaurant at that time in the West Indies, spent 2 years working in the restaurant, and during that time it kind of crystallised that journalism was what I would like to do, and I was then very fortunate. I got my first job, my first big break, working for what was the nationwide programme then. Remember Sue Lawley, Frank Boff, all those guys and gals, and I was a researcher in Belfast, and that was a job which required more common sense than journalistic skill, so it suited me perfectly at that stage, and it's been downhill from there on, really.
Hello, you're watching Newsline 6:30 with Noel Thompson and Donna Traynor. Good evening and welcome to this special edition of Hearts and Minds.
Well, you've been involved in a lot of series here in Northern Ireland. Tell me about the type of things you've been working on.
I've presented pretty much every news and current affairs radio and television programme there is in BBC Northern Ireland. Newsbreak, Good Morning Ulster, PM as it was then is now Evening Extra, and Television Spotlight. I've done most of the election coverage and the big set pieces in the last 4 or 5 years. So it's been a very varied career, and I love every minute of it.
Well, one thing you haven't talked about, Noel, is winning Broadcaster of the Year. That must have been a great buzz for you.
Yes, indeed. I was very fortunate. 2 years in a row, in fact, says he, giving a little puff. I won the Regional Presenter of the Year awarded by the Royal Television Society. And that is marvellous. I mean, for heaven's sake, to win it once was great. To win it twice was just unbelievable. And on both occasions it was very exciting. You go over to London, there's a big dinner in the Grosvenor House Hotel or something like that. All the great names of the industry are there. I can remember Bianca from EastEnders saying to me, "Congratulations," when I won it the first time. It's a cliche, but I always have to say it. I mean, one person wins it, but, one person doesn't make a television programme, and it's a tribute to everyone who's involved in all the programmes I've been in, but it's on my mantelpiece.
Now you're a familiar face on the network. Breakfast news, 1 day a week. Tell me, do you enjoy that, Noel?
It's marvellous because it's a break. I mean, Northern Ireland is a fascinating place to work and always has been, but it is one story and the variations on it. And what I like about my time in London is that it's a completely different world. Indeed, the whole world is there. 1 minute you can be talking to the Foreign Secretary about the Kosovo crisis, the next minute you're talking to some Australian politician about whatever's going on there. The whole world is there. And what I always say is it's marvellous because you can go for 2 whole hours on television without once mentioning decommissioning, which for me is pretty marvellous.
Well, Noel, do you have an interest in painting?
A great interest in painting, not as a practitioner of it, because I'm a completely useless drawer. I mean, I've never been able to draw. I did art at school, of course. At primary school was the last time I did it formally, and I used to come home with my little drawing book and try and draw, those mountain scenes that everyone draws when they're about 8 years old, these ever-unfolding mountain scenes. And that was really as far as I got. And, I mean, it's a skill that I would always have loved to have, but have never really mastered.
I have a great scene in mind for you today, Noel. It's just further down this lane, and believe me, there are absolutely no mountains at all. It's a flat bogland scene, but very effective. And I would say by the end of today, you'll have a fair idea of the techniques involved in watercolour painting. Well, Noel, this is the scene for today's painting. Now, I'll tell you, I've been out here many's a time, whenever the sun is shining, splitting the stones, really, and it looks like the outback in Australia.
Right.
Well, not today. What do you think of the scene?
Well, I like the trees, and I see what you mean about the Australian echoes. I mean, they're very like the sort of tall trees you get out in the outback. The undergrowth or the greenery, of course, is what you wouldn't find in Australia. It'd be much more brown there, but it looks a nice scene. very boggish. Very boggish. I see the bog cotton there, and
it's bog standard, by the way.
Bog standard, okay. And so will my drawing be, of course. And obviously some heathers and ferns and things. So there's a lot of different kinds of greenery and a lot of different shades of green.
Now, the first thing we're going to have to do is get a sketch down on the paper. But before we do that, I want to talk to you for a moment on working sizes. You'll find that most artists have a couple of working sizes. For example, this is a sheet of half imperial size watercolour paper. It's half the imperial size sheet. On the piece of paper we're going to be working on today is quarter imperial. Now, you usually find that when you're working on a subject like this, where we don't have a lot of structural detail, that we want to condense the scene as much as possible. So therefore I would prefer to work on the quarter imperial. So before we start, I'll hand the pencil over to yourself, and I want you to start along there, keeping about a third the way up the paper, so that we get that horizon line in, and we finish up with 2/3 sky, 1/3 foreground.
I know about that, the rule of thirds.
Okay. We're going to go on now and put in that sky. Now, it's a wee bit insipid today, so what we want to do is give it that Australian outback feeling.
I think you're absolutely right.
No kangaroos inside.
Not a kangaroo inside. Is that a wallaby? No.
I want to be.
It's a rabbit.
Right. This is a mixture of raw sienna and water in a very dilute mix, and this is for the sunlit area of cloud. Now, gently put that on. You see the way I'm going there? Not in a uniform way, but just nice and free-flowing to give that open sky area. Keep it towards the bottom more than the top. The sky recedes as it goes towards the horizon, so therefore it's going to be getting lighter. A bit more in this area. Now we're going to put in some warmth, and this is with crimson and ultramarine in a very reddish purple. And try and keep this to the underside.
It looks like it'll be completely wrong, but as soon as it goes down you see it.
Off you go. Now watch. Keep it on the underside, just cradling the bottom of the clouds and moving over to the right. That's fine. Now we must put on some blue sky. I'm just going to blend that out like that. The blue sky is cerulean blue with a touch of crimson. And this is where we shape the clouds. Look, we give the clouds shape. We're shaping the top of the clouds. Off you go. Move across nice and gently. We don't have to rub the paper very hard. Keep it, you see the way you're zigzagging?
Yes,
Put it more like that. That's fine. Right across. Now we're going to a darker blue, and this is ultramarine with a touch of light red. There we are.
This is a real artistic license, you know, there's no blue out there at all.
Well, we can make blue if we wanted. Here you go, pull that across the top now. I'll just show you. Lean very, very lightly and pull down here and there, and go back up again. That's going to give us the cloud shapes. Now let's put some more colour in there. It's a wee bit dull at the moment. So I'm using light red with crimson and some ultramarine. Now this is to give some darker cloud shadows. Now this will look a bit strong at the beginning, look. Just try that. Very light.
And in the sort
of... Keep it broken and then come up in shape. You know, keep it irregular.
Right.
And fill out this area here, this area of white, that's it. Now let's take the excess paint off the brush and we just squeeze it between our finger and thumb, and then we can soften those areas there. Look. Just try that. You only have to touch it like a real feather, you know, not too deep at all, that's it. I must say, Noel, the sky has worked out very well. Now that that's dry, we're going to move down and put in some of this foreground area. Now we're going to do that in 3 stages. The first stage is by putting on a very weak wash of Windsor yellow and Windsor blue, and just pull that across. There you go.
To where?
I'll guide you with the pencil here. Just take it right across that horizon line. One stroke the whole way across. And the lighter you lean on the paper, the more the paint will disperse. That's it. Now come along again, just to the
edge of
water's
the
edge. Yes, and it's very important that you cut that off quite neat. Come right across to here. That's lovely.
So kind of when the brush is in front of you, it's knowing where to stop.
Exactly. So that's all we need to do with that brush. We're going now to the number 8 brush. And this is for the dark green. You can see that there are a lot of varying colours out there. We have dark greens, light greens. Now, just with the point of this brush, and this is a mixture of Windsor yellow and French ultramarine, pull that across, just barely touching the paper. Just move quickly, stop, and then start again. You see the way it bleeds?
It's fantastic the way it
Yeah.
goes there.
The grass is growing.
Yeah.
Now a little bit, lift the brush. Do about an inch at a time.
All right.
And come right across to the path's edge. And you can see that there's some heather out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a purplish colour. And the same technique, leaving some light green, and then we come across with that. Just very, very lightly. That's it.
Again, when I did it, it looks too regular.
It looks good to me. We'll put a dark line along the bottom as well, so into the Windsor yellow with some ultramarine. And just come along the edge of the water. In the same way. That's it. And that gives you the layered effect that we have whenever you look
Very
out
much
there.
so.
Well, that's most of the grassy area, and you can see how those colours have bled together to give us the impression of the scene that we're looking at. Now, we've put in the roadway as well. That was just a mixture of raw sienna and water, and then bleeding in some crimson and ultramarine just to give that shadowed texture effect, and then a little bit of ultramarine and Windsor yellow to give that green effect along the edges of the path. We're going to move on now and put in this water, the watering hole. And that's nothing more than a mixture of ultramarine with a little bit of light red. And the 3/4 inch flat brush, and it's just going to be a couple of horizontal lines coming across. Leaning lightly on the paper, the paint will disperse more easily. Now, can you see at the back of the water hole, there's some shadows or reflections of the grass.
Of the bank.
We're going to put that in now. Just while that's still damp, mixing up Windsor yellow with some Windsor blue and a bit of light red. This is just to give me a rough green colour. Just a darkish green. You need to mix this quickly because that's drying all the time.
Fast.
Now, a few vertical strokes coming down. Just wet that off slightly. Just try that. Touch the chisel edge of the brush flat against the bank. No, hold it, tilt the brush that way. And then just a couple of vertical strokes coming down. That's it. Keep it right along the water's edge. There'll be no break, but some longer than others. Now you see you'll have a dark line coming along there because that is green from the reflected bank above. Now you see how quickly that's drying. You just pull that in a vertical line to indicate some grass is growing above the bank. Well, now you can see how those distant hills now has brought the painting
Yeah,
forward.
we really
quite a
now
bit.
have a foreground, a middle ground, and a background.
Yeah. Well, that was the whole idea of bluing this. That takes us now to the trees. This is just a mixture of raw sienna and water. And using the number 8 brush, we just paint that on over the whole tree.
Being careful to stay, for my purposes, within the lines, of course.
Very much so, because we're going to bleed a darker side into the trees.
Right.
And if we have come out over the lines, then the tree's going to get very bulky at the bottom.
And I paint it all the way up?
All the way up as far as here, say, where the tree starts to narrow. Because if you look out there, you can see that the tree is light against the dark background, but it's dark against the light sky.
Yes.
For the shadowed side of the big tree, we're going to mix ultramarine and light red. Now, if you just leave that for a moment, this is drying all the time, and
Yes.
I think it would just be about the right stage of dryness now to feed this in. Look. Now, and coming up that side, you see what's happening?
Yeah. It's going right across.
But it's still keeping one dry side. Just use that brush and keep it
All the way up.
very much to the right hand side. Just touching on right on the line. Keep it right on the line, otherwise it'll spread right across.
It's terrifying.
Yeah. But as you go up, it's dark against light. Now, there's only this little tree left, so try and get that shape as near to the sketch as possible.
Now you're right to be cautious there and
Yeah.
not touch it too heavily.
It's very nerve-wracking, this, you know.
It is, yes, but
Because you're always afraid of putting too much on, aren't you? That's the...
you better hurry up, the train's coming.
Oh, quick! Don't.
Yeah. Now you see, for that definite shape at the top, just let me have that there for a second. If you put a little bit more pressure on the brush there,
Right.
it'll give you that
Yes.
top
So
shape.
it doesn't matter if you go half a
no,
millimetre over the...
not at all. Now I'll give you some dark colour here, and just feed this in on the underside of the foliage. Just more or less, that's enough. It'll spread through itself. But it's the two-tone from the light green to the dark green that gives you the definition in the tree. Now we'll move on here. I know we don't have a shadow across the path, but we have the light on the left-hand side of the tree. So I'm going to put a shadow across there just to give a wee bit of impact to the bottom left-hand side. And this is a mixture of ultramarine and light red. And ultramarine and light red give you a beautiful bluish tone. And you see what I'm doing there? Just breaking that up and down over the ground and coming across the path. And then we can just put a few bits of darkness there. And then, looking at that, all you'll have to do is a few more little bits of figuring around the branches on the tree. But really there'll be nothing left to do, only sign it.
The thing that strikes me is that it's an unprepossessing view. If you're walking along this path, you wouldn't necessarily stop to look at it. But when you've captured it like this, there's an awful lot of interest in it, isn't there?
But isn't that the thing? You know, most people go out to paint and they walk around all day and they can't find a subject. When really all they have to do is stop where they are, looking in 4 directions, you can get 4 paintings. So don't overcomplicate the thing. Try and simplify the scene as much as possible. And I think you've done a great job.
Well, thank you very much. Couldn't have done it without you.
Noel certainly enjoyed his first painting in watercolours, and there's no doubt Peatlands Park is teeming with painting possibilities. See you next time when I'll introduce you to another special guest on A Wash with Colour.